The Vrakati Dominion had conquered 11 star systems. Their empire stretched across thousands of light years, and every species they had ever encountered had fallen before them. Their method was simple and effective. They would arrive with overwhelming force, broadcast their demands, and watch as primitive species fell apart in fear and panic. It had never failed. Not once in 3,000 years of conquest. High Commander Xerath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched the blue planet grow larger on his viewing screen. Earth, a small world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The humans who lived there had only recently developed nuclear weapons and primitive space travel. They were still confined to their single planet, fighting among themselves over resources and ideology. They would be easy prey. "Begin the standard approach," Xerath commanded. His voice was cold and confident. He had done this many times before. 3,000 warships moved into position around Earth. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons that could turn cities to ash in seconds. The fleet arranged itself in a perfect sphere around the planet, blocking out the stars. It was a display of power meant to crush any hope of resistance before it could begin. Xerath's communication officer activated the broadcast system. The message would be sent to every device on the planet capable of receiving it. Every television, every radio, every computer and phone would carry the words of the Dominion. "People of Earth," the message began, "you are now subjects of the Vrakati Dominion. Your world belongs to us. Your resources belong to us. Your lives belong to us. Resistance is impossible. Surrender is your only option. You have 48 hours to present your leaders for processing. Any act of defiance will result in the destruction of one of your major cities. This is not a negotiation. This is your new reality." The message ended. Xerath leaned back in his command chair and waited for the chaos to begin. On every world they had conquered, the pattern was the same. First came the denial, then the panic. Governments would collapse as populations rioted in the streets. Military forces would fragment as soldiers abandoned their posts to protect their families. Religious leaders would declare the end times. Scientists would argue uselessly about the nature of the threat. And through it all, the different factions of each species would turn on each other, fighting over resources, over blame, over who had the right to surrender first. The Vrakati had studied Earth's broadcasts for decades. They knew humans were a divided species. Hundreds of nations competed for power. Ancient hatreds simmered between groups. They fought wars over invisible lines on maps, over which god to worship, over the color of their skin. Surely, faced with extinction, they would tear themselves apart. Xerath waited. His officers monitored Earth's communications with growing confusion. "High Commander," one of them said after several hours, "something is wrong. Explain." "There is no panic. The humans are talking about us, but they are not afraid. Their news broadcasts are treating our arrival as an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. Their financial markets dropped briefly, then stabilized. Their governments have issued statements asking their populations to remain calm and continue their normal activities." Xerath's scales shifted color in annoyance. "They are in shock. The fear will come." But the fear did not come. 20-4 hours passed. Xerath's intelligence officers delivered report after report, each more confusing than the last. Human military forces had mobilized, but there was no chaos in their ranks. Soldiers reported to their bases in orderly fashion. Civilians went to work, opened their businesses, sent their children to school. The only sign that anything unusual was happening was a slight increase in traffic at grocery stores. The social media networks that humans used to communicate were filled not with terror, but with jokes. They were making fun of the Vrakati fleet. They had created humorous images and videos mocking the appearance of Rakati soldiers. Someone had set the invasion announcement to music. A human phrase kept appearing that the translation software struggled to interpret. Memes. "This is impossible," Xyrath growled. "They are a primitive, fractured species. Why are they not destroying each other?" His senior intelligence officer, a veteran of 6 planetary conquests, approached carefully. "High Commander, I have been analyzing their communications more closely. I believe I have found something significant. Speak." "The humans are not surprised. They are behaving as if they expected us. Their leaders keep using the same phrase. We have prepared for this. Their military communications reference something called the Exo-Contact Protocol. It appears to be a pre-existing plan for exactly this situation." Xyrath dismissed this with a wave of his clawed hand. All primitive species imagine first contact scenarios. It means nothing. They have no real preparation. But doubt had begun to creep into his mind. In 3,000 years, no species had ever reacted to the Dominion's arrival with such calm. Even the most advanced civilizations they had conquered had shown fear. The humans showed only mild irritation, as if the arrival of 3,000 warships was no more concerning than bad weather at the 40-hour mark. Something changed. Earth's communications networks suddenly went quiet. For exactly 12 minutes, almost all transmissions stopped. Then they resumed, but the content had shifted. The jokes and casual discussion were replaced by a single message, repeated across every platform in every language. "Stand by for official response." Xyrath ordered his fleet to high alert. Finally, he thought, the humans would deliver their surrender. Perhaps there would be some begging, some desperate attempt at negotiation. He would enjoy refusing them. The main viewing screen flickered. A human face appeared. It was a female with dark skin and gray hair, wearing a simple uniform with no decorations. Her expression was calm, almost bored. "This is Secretary General Amara Okonkwo of the United Earth Defense Council," she said, "to the commanders of the unidentified fleet currently occupying our orbital space. You are in violation of Sol System sovereign territory. You have 72 hours to withdraw your forces beyond Kuiper Belt. Failure to comply will be met with proportional defensive action. This is your only warning." She paused, and the corner of her mouth turned up in a small smile. "We have been waiting for you. Well, not you specifically, but someone like you. For about 80 years now. We had hoped first contact would be friendly. We prepared for it not to be." Her eyes seemed to look directly at Xyrath. "You have 72 hours. I suggest you use them wisely." The transmission ended. Xyrath stared at the blank screen. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever spoken to the Dominion like that. Not one. His officers stood frozen at their stations, waiting for orders. "High Commander?" Someone finally asked. "What are your instructions?" Xyrath's scales had turned a shade of gray that his crew had never seen before. It was the color of uncertainty. "Find out what they are hiding," he said quietly. "Find out what makes them so confident." He would soon wish he had never asked that question. The year was 1947. The place was a remote desert in New Mexico, in the nation called the United States of America. A rancher named William Brazel found strange debris scattered across his property. Metal that could not be cut or burned. Materials that seemed to repair themselves. And at the center of the debris field, a small object that hummed with energy unlike anything on Earth. The United States military arrived within hours. They collected everything and took it to a secret facility. The official story was that a weather balloon had crashed. The truth was far more significant. Scientists examined the object for months. It was clearly not from Earth. Its technology was centuries beyond anything humans had achieved. It contained power systems, propulsion mechanisms, sensor arrays, and data storage devices that seemed like magic. But it was not magic. It was engineering. And engineering could be understood. The scientists made a disturbing discovery. The object contained data files describing Earth in detail. Population centers, resource deposits, military capabilities, even cultural and psychological profiles of human societies. The object was a probe, sent to study Earth and transmit information back to whoever had built it. The implications were terrifying. Something out there was watching humanity. Something that was gathering information for a purpose. And that purpose, the scientists concluded, was almost certainly not friendly. President Harry Truman was briefed on the findings. He made a decision that would change the course of human history. He reached out, through secret channels, to the leaders of other nations. The Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France, China, even nations that were officially enemies of the United States thought the message was simple. Humanity faced a threat from beyond the stars. That threat could arrive in decades, centuries, or tomorrow. No single nation could prepare for it alone. Whatever conflicts divided humanity on the surface, they needed to unite in secret to face this common enemy. It was the hardest negotiation in human history. Nations that had just finished fighting World War II were asked to trust each other with their greatest secret. Leaders who hated each other were asked to cooperate on a project that might not bear fruit for generations. But the alternative was extinction. The Shadow Alliance was formed in 1952. It had no official name, no public existence, no paper trail that could be discovered. It operated through a network of secret facilities, hidden budgets, and carefully selected personnel. Its mission was simple: prepare Earth for alien contact, whether friendly or hostile. For the next 8 decades, the Shadow Alliance worked in silence. They reverse-engineered the probe piece by piece. Every technology it contained was studied, understood, and eventually replicated. The power systems led to new forms of energy generation. The propulsion mechanisms led to engines that could push ships to incredible speeds. The sensor arrays led to detection systems that could see across the solar system. But the Alliance did not share these technologies with the world. That would have caused chaos. Instead, they built in secret. Facilities were constructed underground, inside mountains, beneath the ocean floor. Ships were assembled in hidden asteroid bases. Weapons platforms were placed throughout the solar system, designed to look like natural they were activated. The Alliance also prepared humanity psychologically. They knew that when first contact came, panic could be as dangerous as any alien weapon. So they worked to normalize the idea of extraterrestrial life. Science fiction films and television shows were quietly encouraged. Stories of alien contact became common in popular culture. By the time the Vracati arrived, most humans had grown up watching movies about alien invasions. The idea was familiar, almost boring. The Alliance trained soldiers for a war that might never come. They developed tactics for fighting in space, for defending planets, for boarding enemy vessels. They created special forces units that could survive conditions that would kill ordinary humans. They built medical technology that could keep soldiers fighting through injuries that should have been fatal, and they waited. Generations passed. The original founders of the Alliance died and were replaced by their successors. The secret was passed down to carefully chosen individuals, people who could carry the weight of knowing that humanity's survival depended on their silence. Presidents and prime ministers came and went, most never knowing the truth. Only a select few were briefed on the full scope of the preparations. The Cold War raged on the surface. The United States and Soviet Union pointed nuclear weapons at each other, came to the brink of destruction multiple times, fought proxy wars across the globe. But beneath the surface, Their scientists worked side by side. Their soldiers trained together. Their leaders coordinated the greatest secret project in human history. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the Shadow Alliance faced a crisis. How could they maintain their secret when one of their founding members was dissolving into chaos? The answer was careful management and deep patience. The Russian Federation was brought into the alliance. China was given a larger role. New nations were added as they developed the capability to contribute. By 2024, the alliance included every major nation on Earth. The facilities they had built could produce hundreds of warships per year. Their weapons could threaten any fleet in the galaxy. Their soldiers were the most highly trained warriors humanity had ever produced. And still, they waited. When the Vrikati fleet arrived, the message went out through channels that had been tested countless times in drills. World leaders who knew the secret activated the protocols they had inherited from their predecessors. Those who did not know were given simple instructions. Keep calm, follow the plan, trust the preparations had been made. The plan worked perfectly. While the Vrikati watched and waited for humanity to collapse into chaos, humanity simply went about its business. The panic the aliens expected never came because humans had been preparing for this moment, consciously or unconsciously. For their entire lives, Secretary General Amara Akonko had been chosen for her role decades ago. She had trained for it, practiced the speeches, studied the psychology of first contact. When she faced the Vrikati High Commander, she was not pretending to be confident. She knew exactly what forces stood behind her. She knew that humanity was ready. The secret that had been kept for 80 years was finally revealed. Not to the world, which still only knew fragments of the truth, but to the enemy that had underestimated humanity so badly. The Vrikati had expected to find a primitive, divided species ripe for conquest. Instead, they had found a trap that had been waiting for them since before most of them were born. High Commander Zyrith spent the next 12 hours demanding answers from his intelligence division. How could a primitive species speak to the Dominion with such arrogance? They had no fleet. Their space technology was barely capable of reaching their own moon. Their weapons were crude chemical explosives and simple nuclear devices. By every measure the Vrikati used to assess threats, Earth should have been helpless. Scan the entire system, Zyrith ordered. Find whatever they are hiding. His sensor operators went to work. The results came back confusing. Earth itself showed nothing unusual. Their military bases were active but modest. Their few space stations were small and clearly civilian in purpose. Their satellites were primitive communication and observation platforms. Nothing that could threaten the Dominion fleet. But then the deep scans began returning strange data. High Commander, a sensor operator said, his voice uncertain. I am detecting anomalies throughout the system. There are objects hidden in the asteroid belt. Large objects. They appear to be powered down, but they have energy signatures that do not match any known human technology. How many objects? The operator checked his readings twice before answering. Thousands, High Commander. Possibly tens of thousands. They are embedded in asteroids, hidden in the rings of Saturn, buried beneath the surface of several moons. Some appear to be orbital platforms. Others appear to be ships. Zyrith rose from his command chair. That is impossible. Humans cannot build ships. They have no faster-than-light capability. They have never left our own planet in significant numbers. The readings are clear, High Commander. The objects are there. They have been there for a long time. Decades, perhaps longer. They were designed to be invisible to standard scans. We only detected them because we were looking specifically for hidden installations. Before Zyrith could respond, more reports began flooding in. Weapons platforms on Earth's moon were powering up. Defense stations hidden in debris fields around Earth were activating. And deep in the asteroid belt, something very large was beginning to move. The human fleet emerged from hiding like ghosts, becoming solid. There were hundreds of ships, ranging from small fighters to massive carriers. They did not look like human technology. They were sleek and angular, built for war, powered by energy systems that the Vracati had never seen humans possess. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out to surround the Dominion fleet. Xyrith watched in stunned silence. Where did they get this technology? He whispered. His intelligence officer had been working frantically at his station. Now he looked up with an expression of dawning horror. "Hi, Commander. I have been analyzing the energy signatures of their ships. The core technology is not human in origin. It appears to be based on Vracati designs. Very old Vracati designs. Explain. 78 of their years ago, we sent an automated probe to this system to catalog it for future conquest. That probe was never heard from again. We assumed it malfunctioned and was destroyed. But the energy patterns I am seeing suggest." He paused, struggling to accept his own conclusion. "The humans found our probe. They captured it. And they have spent the last 8 decades studying it, reverse engineering it, and building upon it." Xyrith felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest. Fear. True fear. Not of the human fleet, which was still vastly outnumbered by his forces, but of what the fleet represented. Of what kind of species could take a single piece of alien technology and, in less than a century, build an entire hidden military infrastructure from it. More data arrived. The humans had not just built ships. They had built an entire war machine in secret. Defense platforms were scattered throughout the solar system, hidden in places no one would think to look. Manufacturing facilities were buried deep in asteroids. Training bases existed on moons that appeared uninhabited. And all of it had been built while humans continued to fight their petty wars on the surface, while their politicians argued and their nations competed. "They were preparing," Xyrith said slowly. "While they fought each other, while they appeared divided and weak, they were preparing for us." His tactical officer approached with a data tablet. "Hi, Commander. I have completed an analysis of their fleet capabilities. Their weapons are based on our technology, but they have made modifications we do not understand. Their ships are faster than ours. Their targeting systems appear to be more accurate. And they have something we do not." "What?" "Pilots." The tactical officer brought up images on the main screen. "Every one of their combat vessels is crewed by humans. Living beings who can make decisions in real time, adapt to changing situations, take risks that no automated system would take. Our probes and fighters are controlled remotely or by simple combat programs. Theirs are controlled by beings who are willing to die for their world." Xyrith stared at the human fleet on his screen. 3,000 Vracati warships against a few hundred human vessels. The numbers were still in his favor, but numbers had never told the whole story. The Vracati conquered through fear and overwhelming force. They had never faced a species that was not afraid. New transmission arrived from Earth. Secretary General Okonkwo appeared on the screen again. "Hi, Commander," she said. "By now your sensors have detected our defense infrastructure. I want to be clear about something. What you have found is what we allowed you to find. There is more that remains hidden. We have been preparing for this moment since before you sent your probe to our system. We knew you would come eventually. We did not know when or in what numbers. So we prepared for the worst." She leaned forward slightly. "You have 53 hours remaining. I strongly suggest you withdraw. We do not want war. We have had enough war among ourselves to last 1,000 lifetimes. But we will not submit. We will not surrender. And we will not lose." The transmission ended. Xyrith turned to his command staff. Every face showed the same expression: uncertainty. They had never faced anything like this. The Vrikati way of war was to overwhelm inferior species with superior numbers and technology. But the humans were not inferior. They had taken Vrikati technology and improved upon it. They had built a hidden military in secret while pretending to be primitive and divided. They had prepared for an enemy they had never met with patience and determination that seemed almost impossible. "What are your orders, High Commander?" his second-in-command asked. Zira thought for a long moment. He could retreat. It would be the first retreat in Dominion history, but it would preserve his fleet. Or he could attack, gambling that superior numbers would win the day. But something in his gut told him that the humans had more surprises waiting, that they wanted him to attack. "We hold position," he said finally. "We wait. We watch. And we learn everything we can about these humans before we make our decision." It was the wisest choice he had ever made. It was also far too late. The 72 hours expired at exactly midnight, Greenwich Mean Time. High Commander Zirith had chosen not to withdraw. His pride would not allow it. The Vrikati Dominion had never retreated from a conquest. He would not be the first commander to bring that shame upon his people. Besides, he still believed in numbers. 3,000 warships against a few hundred. Even if the humans had surprises waiting, surely overwhelming force would prevail. It always had before. "All ships, advance to attack formation," Zirith commanded. "Target their orbital platforms first. Once those are eliminated, we will deal with their fleet." The Dominion Armada began to move. 3,000 vessels, each one a masterpiece of Vrikati engineering, each one crewed by warriors who had known only victory. They moved with the confidence of conquerors, certain that this battle would be like every battle before it. The human fleet did not retreat. They held their positions, forming a defensive line between the Vrikati and Earth. Their ships were smaller, fewer in number, but they moved with precision that spoke of endless practice. Every vessel knew its place, its role, its targets. The first shots were fired at 0 hours 7 minutes and 33 seconds. Vrikati energy weapons lanced across space. Brilliant beams of destruction that had burned through the hulls of 100 different species ships. They struck the human vessels and did nothing. The human shields held. More than held. They seemed to absorb the energy and grow stronger. "Impossible," Zirith's weapons officer gasped. "They are using adaptive shielding. Technology we have only theorized about. They are turning our own weapons energy against us. Increase power. Concentrate fire on their lead vessels." The Vrikati fleet poured energy into their weapons. Hundreds of beams focused on a single human cruiser. The shields flickered, struggled, and finally failed. The cruiser exploded in a ball of fire. A cheer went up across the Vrikati fleet. It was the last thing they would celebrate. The human response came not from their fleet, but from somewhere much further away. From platforms hidden throughout the solar system, from launchers buried on moons and asteroids, from weapons that had been waiting decades for this moment. They were called kinetic impactors. Simple in concept. Take a rod of tungsten, the densest practical material available, accelerate it to a significant fraction of the speed of light, and let physics do the rest. No warhead needed. No explosives. Just mass and velocity combining to create destruction on a scale that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. The Vrikati had shields that could stop energy weapons. They had point defense systems that could shoot down missiles. They had armor that could withstand incredible punishment. None of it mattered against kinetic impactors. The rods could not be jammed. They had no electronics to disrupt. They could not be shot down. They were moving too fast for any targeting system to track. They could not be stopped by shields designed to dissipate energy, because they carried no energy. They were just metal, moving very, very fast. The first wave struck at 0 hours 12 minutes and 17 seconds. 247 Verkade warships were hit simultaneously. The rods punched through shields like they were not there. They tore through armor like paper. They continued through the ships and out the other side, leaving catastrophic damage in their wake. Ships that had conquered worlds died in microseconds, their crews never knowing what had hit them. Xyrath watched in horror as his fleet disintegrated around him. What is happening? What are they hitting us with? His tactical officer was screaming into his console, trying to make sense of the data. Kinetic weapons. Simple projectiles. They are attacking us with rocks. Then shoot them down. We cannot. They are too fast. By the time our sensors detect them, they have already hit. The second wave arrived. Then the third. Then the fourth. The Verkade fleet scattered, trying to evade, but the humans had calculated firing solutions for every possible escape route. Wherever the Verkade ships went, the rods followed. And while the fleet burned, the human ships attacked. They moved like nothing the Verkade had ever seen. Human pilots pushed their vessels through maneuvers that should have killed them. They pulled turns that would have crushed any Verkade crew. They accelerated and decelerated with a violence that seemed suicidal. And through it all, they fought with a ferocity that was almost beautiful. Xyrath's officers reported that human pilots were laughing on open channels, laughing as they dove into the guns of Verkade warships, laughing as they sacrificed themselves to take out enemy vessels, laughing as they died. They are insane, his second command whispered. They have no fear of death. They welcome it. The battle lasted 7 hours at the end. Less than 400 Verkade ships remained operational. The human fleet had lost perhaps a third of its vessels, but they had destroyed more than 2,000 Dominion warships. The greatest military defeat in Verkade history. Xyrath's flagship was surrounded. Human vessels had disabled its engines, its weapons, its shields. It drifted dead in space, kept alive only because the humans had chosen not to destroy it. The High Commander sat in his command chair, staring at the wreckage that surrounded him. His scales had turned completely white, the color of defeat. Around him, his surviving crew waited in silence. A human shuttle approached the flagship. Not an attack craft. A diplomatic vessel. High Commander, his communications officer reported. They are requesting permission to dock. They say they wish to discuss terms. Xyrath almost laughed. Terms. The Verkade had never discussed terms with a conquered species. They dictated. They commanded. They took what they wanted. But the Verkade were not the conquerors here. Let them aboard, he said quietly. The humans who entered his bridge were unlike anything Xyrath had expected. They were small, fragile-looking creatures. Their bodies seemed soft, their limbs thin, their senses limited. They should have been prey. Every instinct in Xyrath's body told him these beings were weak, but he had just watched those weak beings destroy his fleet. Their leader was a young human male in a simple uniform. He walked with confidence, but not arrogance. He looked at Xyrath with curiosity, not hatred. High Commander, the human said. My name is Captain James Okonkwo. My mother sends her regards. She asked me to deliver a message. What message? That the killing is over. That we do not wish to destroy you. That there is another way forward, if you are willing to take it. Xyrath stared at the human. You could destroy us. You have won. Why would you show mercy? Captain Okonkwo smiled. It was a gentle expression, strange on the face of a warrior who had just helped annihilate thousands of ships. Because we have had enough of death, High Commander. We have spent our entire history killing each other. We have become very, very good at it. But we are tired of it. We built all of this, he gestured at the wreckage visible through the viewport, because we had to. Not because we wanted to. He stepped closer to Xyrith. We are offering you something that we suspect you have never been offered before. A choice. You can return to your dominion. You can tell them what happened here. And you can deliver a message that might change everything. What message? That humanity wants peace, but that we are very, very prepared for war. High Commander Zira stood before the Council of Dominion. The chamber was vast, built to intimidate, filled with representatives from across the Rakati Empire. Every eye was fixed on him. Every face showed the same expression. Disbelief. He had returned home with less than 400 ships out of 3,000. He had returned with news of defeat. In 3,000 years of Dominion history, nothing like this had ever happened. You expect us to believe, the Supreme Overlord said slowly, that a primitive species confined to a single planet defeated the greatest fleet we have ever assembled. I expect you to believe the truth, Supreme One, Xyrith replied. I have brought sensor recordings, battle data, and the testimony of every surviving crew member. The humans were not primitive. They had been preparing for us for 80 of their years. They had technology based on our own designs, improved in ways we do not yet understand. And they had something else. Something that no data can capture. What? Xyrith thought carefully before answering. How could he explain what he had witnessed? How could he describe the way human pilots had flown their ships like extensions of their own bodies? How could he convey the terror of facing an enemy that laughed in the face of death? They were not afraid, he said finally. Every species we have conquered has feared us. That fear made them weak, made them divided, made them easy to break. The humans did not fear us. They had spent their entire existence fighting each other. They had survived wars that should have destroyed them. They had looked into the possibility of their own extinction many times and continued forward anyway. When we arrived, we were just another threat to overcome. And they had been preparing to overcome us since before I was born. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives demanded revenge, demanded that the full might of the Dominion be brought against Earth. Some called for Xyrith to be executed for his failure. Others insisted that his report must be false, that no primitive species could have achieved what he described. The Supreme Overlord raised a hand, and silence fell. You said the humans gave you a message to deliver. What was it? Xyrith reached into his uniform and withdrew a small device. They recorded it themselves. They asked that it be played for this council. He activated the device. A holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo stood before them, her expression calm and serious. Leaders of the Rakati Dominion, she began. By now you have heard what happened at Earth. You know that your fleet was defeated. You know that your conquest failed. I am not here to gloat about our victory. I am here to offer you something better. She paused, letting her words sink in. For 3,000 years, your empire has grown through conquest. You have taken what you wanted from weaker species. You have built your civilization on the suffering of others. It has worked for you. I understand why you see it as the natural order of things. But it does not have to be that way. Earth is proof of that. We are a species that spent most of our history at war with ourselves. We killed each other over land, over resources, over ideas. We came close to destroying ourselves many times. But we learned. Slowly, painfully, we learned that cooperation is more powerful than conquest. That trade is more profitable than theft. That friends are more valuable than subjects. We do not want war with your dominion. We have had enough war. We want to trade, to share knowledge, to explore the universe together. We want to show you a different way of existing. Not because we are weak, but because we know that the universe is vast and dangerous. And species that fight each other only make themselves vulnerable to greater threats. Her expression hardened slightly. But understand this clearly. We will never submit. We will never surrender. We will never allow our people to be conquered or enslaved. If you come to Earth again with hostile intent, we will respond with everything we have. And as your High Commander can tell you, what we showed you in the battle was not everything we have. Not even close. We have weapons that we did not use, defenses that we did not reveal, and we are building more every day. Not because we want war, but because we have learned that peace must be defended. The choice is yours, Dominion. You can continue down the path of conquest, and eventually you will face a species you cannot defeat. Perhaps that will be us. Perhaps it will be something else, something worse, something that does not offer second chances. Or you can try something new. Send diplomats instead of warships. Seek trade instead of tribute. Learn from us as we will learn from you. The universe does not have to be a place of endless war. It can be something better. We believe that. We hope you will believe it too. The recording ended. The council chamber was silent. Xyrath watched the faces of the representatives, seeing a mix of anger, confusion, and something he had not expected: consideration. Some of them were actually thinking about what the human had said. The Supreme Overlord spoke at last. This species, they truly believe what they say? I believe they do, Supreme One. They had every reason to destroy us. They could have killed every survivor, stripped our ships for technology, and prepared for our response. Instead, they repaired our vessels enough to travel home. They returned our wounded. They gave us supplies for the journey. Xyrath shook his head. They treated us as they would want to be treated. Why? Because they said it was the right thing to do. They have a concept they call honor. It means behaving correctly even when no one is watching, even when there is no practical benefit. They believe that how you treat a defeated enemy says more about you than how you treat friends. The Supreme Overlord was quiet for a long moment. In 3,000 years, no conquered species has ever spoken to us as equals. They have begged, threatened, pleaded, bargained, but always from a position of weakness. The humans spoke to us from a position of strength, and they offered peace. What are your orders, Supreme One? A council member asked. Shall we assemble a larger fleet? The Supreme Overlord stood and walked to the center of the chamber, looking at the space where the human recording had played. No, we will do something that the Dominion has never done before. We will send diplomats. We will see if these humans mean what they say. We will test this concept of theirs. This peace. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. And if it is a trap, someone demanded. If they are simply buying time to build more weapons, the Supreme Overlord turned to face the council. Then we will have lost nothing but time. But if it is real, if these humans have truly found a way to grow strong without conquest, then we have everything to gain by understanding how. The news spread across the galaxy in the months that followed. The Vrikati Dominion, conquerors of 11 star systems, had opened diplomatic relations with a species from a single planet. Trade agreements were negotiated. Knowledge was exchanged. Slowly, carefully, trust was built. Other species took notice. Some sought contact with Earth, curious about the people who had stopped the Dominion. Others joined the growing network of trade and diplomacy that spread outward from Sol System. Within a century, Earth had become something unprecedented, a hub of galactic cooperation, a neutral ground where former enemies could meet as equals. The humans never forgot their history. They kept their defenses strong, their fleets ready, their weapons sharp. They knew that the universe was not safe, that threats could emerge without warning, that peace had to be protected by the willingness to fight. But they also never forgot their dream. A dream of a galaxy where species cooperated instead of conquered, where strength was used to protect instead of destroy, where the vast darkness of space was filled not with fear, but with possibility. They had come in peace. They had meant it. But they had also come prepared, and that, in the end, was what made all the difference.